talking Illinois high school football.
If your goals are as high as you talk about, tonight's the night you go out and just take one more step.
It's a view from the West.
And it starts right now!
Welcome into View from the West podcast, the podcast covering Illinois high school football on the western side of the state of Illinois. I'm your host, Greg Armstrong. We're back for another season preview. This time we're jumping into the Lincolnland Conference. I'm joined once again, as always, back from the hot, steamy state of Texas, Mitch Stormer. Mitch, how you doing?
I feel like I've melted all week. It gives you some perspective as to, how good the football is down there and what conditions that they have to practice through in the hot summer months, because it's, it got up to like 107 and even at 9 o'clock at night, it was still 95. And it's not for me. I'll tell you that much. So nice to be back in the Midwest, where it's a little cooler, and talking with you for some more football.
All right. You don't have any Texas high school state previews for us, do you?
No, who are the players? It's always like Duncanville and North Shore and South Lake Carroll. So we'll just assume they're good again, and we'll go from there.
All right, that wraps up our Texas state preview. So
that's right.
All right.
for all your Texas needs, please come to View from the West podcast.
That's right. All right, well, let's jump into what we're a little more familiar with: the land of Lincoln. Today being the Lincolnland Conference preview. Of course, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Breedlove Sporting Goods, Western Illinois' premier sporting goods store for uniforms, apparel, equipment, awards, and online team stores. They provide all the same sporting goods services that the big nationwide companies do, but with a faster turnaround, and their uniform pricing is a fraction of the cost that you're probably used to. They offer name brands such as Adidas, Under Armour, Nike, and are extremely responsive with any inquiries. With a primary focus on the western side of the state of Illinois, Breedlove Sporting Goods is the fastest way to outfit your team. Check them out on Facebook or at breedlovesports.com, or you can contact Cal Breedlove directly. Email him at calbreedlove@gmail.com for more information. Mitch, great to have Breedloves on board. Let's jump into the Lincolnland Conference. This newly formed conference here, combination of the Lincoln Trail and the Prairie Land. So we got some new teams. We're exploring, some rosters we haven't dove into in the past. We've talked a little bit about Farmington and Elmwood, Brimfield, Macomb when they've done their crossovers, and the other teams in the Prairie Land, certainly. Those were the big names last year that I remember. But some new rosters to dive into. And Mitch, some new uniforms, some good looking helmets I've seen.
Yeah, some good uniforms. I haven't dug too far into this yet, Greg, and I know that's on me. It's something I got to catch up on. I've seen Farmingtons, I've seen the Farmers. Love that look, love the nickname. So yeah, anytime that we can add some new schools to talk about, just like you said, we've seen these schools in the past couple of years where the two conferences have had those one or two crossover games every year. So nobody that we're unfamiliar with, certainly, but now that we'll be covering them on a more regular basis, good to have them on board. And to say that, and one of the first teams we'll talk about, this conference will go through even some more changes next year with teams, or at least one team moving out, one team moving in. So as always, lots of changes that we're trying to keep track of and stay ahead of. So, but the 2023 roster here of schools looks pretty good, and looking forward to a great season.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. Let's mention that we've talked about on our previous podcast, Bureau Valley has been accepted into the Lincoln Trail Conference. So they will slide into this Lincolnland Conference for football. And we've heard that they will, I guess it naturally makes sense, they will fill the void that will be left by Mercer County. So they'll end up in the large school side. I think they'll be maybe, near the border, near the cut line of the small and the big schools. But I think they're right around the same size as like Knoxville. So the enrollment wise will fit in that large school side. And naturally with Mercer County leaving, that's kind of the perfect fit for them as far as, helping the conference out. So Bureau Valley next year will jump in to fill Mercer County's spot. But let's talk about the Mercer County Golden Eagles. We'll start there. Yeah. And the Mercer County Golden Eagles, 7-3 a year ago, lost a heartbreaker to Bloom Central Catholic, 27-26 in the playoffs. This year, head coach Tanner Matlick takes over his first year. He steps in for Andrew Hofer, who'd been at Mercer County for several years. And as Mercer County does, kept them competitive, kept them in the playoff mix every year. But let's jump into what this Golden Eagles squad looks like heading into the 23 season. Mitch, we saw it last year on display. I think they're going to have it again this year. Some speed, multi-dimensional offense, be able to do a lot of things, and a physical defense. Those are kind of their calling cards. I think you're going to see them again this year.
Yeah, I think so too. Certainly when you talk about that speed and that multi-dimensional offense, it's going to be led by Colby Cox, a name that we talked about a lot last year. Really has a good control of this Golden Eagle offense. So looking forward to having him back. That's really good experience to have for this team moving forward. Like you said, coming off of a heartbreaker last year in the playoffs, you got to imagine that this team is ready to go and ready to compete for yet another conference title. So I'm looking at Colby Cox. I'm looking at maybe a target of his in William Fredrickson. I think he's gonna flash on both sides of the ball as a receiver and as a defensive back. But when we talk about physicality on both lines, the senior there with Ian Willits really going to anchor that line. So this is a great team. I think they have experience coming back. And again, when you go through a playoff loss like that, it does sharpen you as a team. And that was one thing that Coach Matlick wants his team to do. It really wants to sharpen their IQ and just get immersed in the game, right? It's one thing to go through the X's and O's. If you can take that a little bit further, how much more can that add to your game? And I think that's what Coach is looking forward for his kids to do. And with the experience they have coming back, I think they can do it.
Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting note that he talked about, as a first-year head coach, mentioning not necessarily, building a big scheme or doing something different offensively, defensively, playbook-wise, but just that football IQ aspect and just really helping his players to try to take that next step and say, we're teaching you to do this, but why are we teaching you to do this? That I thought was really interesting for a first-year head coach.
Yeah, and it ironically enough, it kind of echoes. I was on the plane. I was watching the first episode of Hard Knocks, this season's version of Hard Knocks, and that's almost what the Jets are saying. You go lift, and then what? You make a great play, and then what? So it's not just doing the one thing. It's what you do afterwards to continue progressing and getting better. So yeah, great for Coach to kind of have that mindset early and to be aware of that. And we'll see if this team can kind of follow those words.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what Tanner Matlick can do, as a head coach at Mercer County in particular, especially this year. He was a successful quarterback at Mercer County with an athlete like Colby Cox, who's there with that experience and that football IQ that we talked about. Just having those varsity reps, having a lot of success at the varsity level. What can Tanner Matlick do as a former, not too far off, played high school football not too long ago? What can he do to kind of relate to that player, to that, elite athlete at quarterback? I think that's an interesting dynamic that I'm excited to follow there in Mercer County. So
yeah, same here for sure. And this will be, as we talked about, this will be their last season. Their first season in the new conference / last season in the new conference, as they will slide over to the track next year.
Yeah, a lot of changes, in the last 3 years for Mercer County, going from all Lincoln Trail to this Lincolnland, now next year to Three Rivers. But I think by the time they settle in the Three Rivers, that's their great fit. I think that's where they belong. We had a whole podcast about it. You can go back and listen to you and I talk with Ty Taylor about it. But yeah, I think that'll be a good fit for them moving forward. But for this year, we'll see where they compete in this conference. All right.
Week one, they are hosting Monmouth United.
Okay, there we go. So a familiar Lincoln Trail crossover opponent there. Yep.
In what, we're 2 weeks out? This is Thursday. We're 2 weeks away.
Yeah, man, it's coming. I know.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I know. So, all right, let's move down the way here to Illini West. Mitch, a team that's kind of, been on our radar, obviously, for years as a very good program. But the first year, we're really diving in and covering them here on View from the West when they joined this conference. So the Illini West Chargers, 4-5 last year. I want to give a thank you to Jacob Calvin. And I actually want to take a pause and give thank you to, Illini West, Elmwood, Brimfield, Farmington, West Hancock, Macomb, the schools that we're not really familiar with, and we reached out to them and sent out the preseason form. All those coaches responded within a week. They got back to us, gave us great information. They may not really be all that familiar with what we're doing here, but I appreciate they took the time to help us out. So I do want to give a quick plug for, big thank you to that. So let's jump in here. Illini West 4-5 last year, kind of a down year overall for what you expect year in and year out historically from Illini West. They have, Coach Calvin thinks they have great team speed, good depth at their skill positions, which is always important. Solid linebacker core that has a lot of varsity experience. So those pieces are all really interesting to me to see if this Illini West team can, build that 5-6 wins or maybe even beyond.
Yeah, and that's a really good set of attributes for a team, right? Especially an experienced team like the Chargers are going to put on the field this year. Interested to see what Coach Calvin has. We're hearing some words of a new defensive scheme that maybe allows more speed to be on the field. So really interested to see how that looks. And I think that's great. You have a 4-5 year, you take a look at what potentially went wrong in that season, and you make adjustments as you go. So this I'm looking forward to this. And again, with the experience that they have back, and even the skills that they have back, that coach thinks that they have the guys that can really break a game open. Now, again, a young offensive line, maybe take a couple games to get kind of in the rhythm. Yep. But again, with the experience that these guys bring back, you got guys that played varsity as sophomores. Looking forward to seeing how Illini West responds from a 4-5 season last year.
Yep. Go through some of the names here that they have coming back. The experience we've talked about. Ian Bensinger, a running back and a linebacker. He's a senior. Nick Hulls will be a senior on that offensive and defensive line. Playing behind them, Max Kinneman, quarterback, defensive back. You also have Thomas Chandler, who will be a linebacker and an offensive lineman. He's a senior. Lucas Finch, Jorge Espinoza. So a few guys there that, could be some names that we're going to be hearing throughout the season, names to watch out for. They'll open with a pretty interesting matchup against Farmington. We'll talk about Farmington in a minute, but this game could go a long way. I think it sounds weird to say it, but in week 1, this game goes a long way in determining kind of which direction these programs are headed in, don't you think?
Yeah, and that's kind of where we're headed with a lot of these conferences, where they're playing a full 9-game schedule of conference games. Every week matters. And not to say that, a non-conference game doesn't matter, certainly for playoff implications. But now if you're playing a full conference schedule, it just means a little bit more to get towards that, conference title.
So this conference is weird because they actually have one true non-conference game. The Big School side. The Big School side has one true non-conference game, and the other one is a crossover.
Okay.
Yeah.
Either way, starting week 1. Yeah, starting week 1 with Farmington, certainly. You want to get off on the right foot. So tough challenge here for the Chargers and for Farmington for that matter.
Well, you look at their first 3 games: Farmington, Elmwood, Brimfield, and Macomb. So I think as we go through this list of the Big School side, this conference, this Big School division is really going to be competitive. There's a lot of good programs and a lot of good teams that are going to be vying for that top spot. Choosing the winner of this conference is by no means automatic.
Yeah, and that's, a little bit of a gauntlet there in the first 3 weeks, but it also gives Illini West maybe the 3 best teams that they'll face right away. And then, see how you do against them. What can you work on? Maybe pull off a couple wins here. Certainly that's a possibility. Yeah. And then maybe that schedule eases up a little bit, grab some wins, and you're looking into the playoffs.
Mitch, you're already making enemies with Knoxville and Mercer County when you just throw it down like that.
I don't ever want to make enemies of them, but hey,
it'll be a tough start to the schedule. I agree. Yeah.
Macomb had an undefeated regular season.
Yep.
Elmwood Brimfield was 6-3. Farmington was 7-2. So, the whole conference is a gauntlet. So,
Yep. Well, let's jump into the next team that we just referenced, Elmwood Brimfield. The Trojans, 6-4 a year ago. We're in the playoffs. Head coach Todd Hollis leads them. Overall, team speed is good. Their O-line has been coming together this year. He really likes what he sees out of their offensive line. And as always, like he references, line play will dictate overall team success. I've heard that so many times, in these season previews. But man, it's for real. I mean, it sounds like a cliche the more you hear it, but it really is true. If you can establish yourself up front, there's a lot of damage you can do.
Yeah, you got to win. You got to win the trenches. There's no question about that. So that sentiment seems to be pretty popular amongst all the teams that we cover. What'll be an interesting wrinkle for the Trojans this year is that they don't have any varsity experience at quarterback returning. So that really will. They'll really need to rely on that line on that line play, but on both sides of the ball, but certainly the offensive side with a new quarterback coming in. They need to get that position solidified, certainly, and get a good play caller back there. So that line will help that. Absolutely.
Yep. Well, a few of the playmakers they'll have on the offensive side of the ball at running back, Bailey Elwell is back as a senior. Lane Durst is a senior who will be there in the mix. On the defensive side of the ball, Elwell will also be there as a defensive back. Jimmy Babcock, a senior, as a defensive back as well. So, a few names to watch for there. On that line, on the offensive side of the ball, you're going to have Elijah Davis and Nate Schmidt. Those are seniors that are going to really have to kind of help, like we said, establish that line and kind of create what they want to do on offense and give them that positive momentum on the offensive side of the ball. Mitch, again, we've talked about the matchups in this conference, and they start right in week 1. Elmwood Brimfield versus Knoxville. That's a tough one to call. We'll talk about Knoxville in a minute, but right away, these are tough games that are kind of toss-ups.
Yeah, kind of just looking through the whole schedule here, they're really good week 1 matchups. So this new conference is starting off with a bang, no question about it.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well, we'll keep rolling down the list here. The Farmington Farmers, always a program that, they're on our radar because they're a playoff team year in and year out. 7-2 a year ago, they beat El Paso Gridley in the first round. They lost to Maroa Forsyth, who went on to have a run to the state championship game, I believe, finished runner-up, right?
Yes, I believe so.
So head coach Toby Vallis will lead the Farmers. And Mitch, before we get into the preview, Coach Vallis throw down the gauntlet and says they have the best helmet.
In the conference, in the state, how far is he taking that?
I don't know that he clarified. Okay. I don't know that he clarified. Let's see. He just said we have the best helmets. That's pretty open-ended.
And he's got a shot. He's got a very good shot at that. Certainly, I've always been a fan of Knoxville's, simple helmet. There's a lot of contenders in this. And whether so there's a lot of contenders in this conference. So that's high talk, but he does have a case for that, no question.
So we'll paint the picture for the listening audience here. They've always historically done the gold star on a purple helmet with the F in the middle of the star. That was always what they did for years and years. But they've gotten now a little extra creative, and inside the star, the F has a little pitchfork going through it, and then the center stripe, the real, I don't know what you say, the real centerpiece, the real eye catcher of the helmet now is the pitchfork goes down the center of the helmet with the 3 tongs of the pitchfork right in the middle, right by the face mask. It's cool. It's really cool. It really pops. I've seen a lot of photos of it and video of it. So I can't argue too much. It is a great looking helmet. I don't want to make other fan bases mad. So I won't say best. I'll let him say it, but
yeah, he's got a point. There's no question. It's a cool helmet. Now,
all right.
Now the players on his team that making up and wearing that cool helmet, that's where I think Coach Vallis has his work cut out for him. They're going to be starting maybe 10 underclassmen on each side of the ball. So this is going to be an interesting year for Farmington, no question about it. So when you have a young team like that coming off of a playoff season, that's a challenge. There's no question about it.
Yeah, that it'll be a different looking team than certainly, the little bit of a lack of experience going into this season. Lane Wheelwright, a junior quarterback. Logan UTT. How do we think I pronounce that? Yes? No?
I would say it's
Ute. Okay. And
correct us if we're wrong, Farmington.
Yeah, that's right. Let us know. Jack Gronwald will be a sophomore wide receiver. So all, potential impact players, but all first-time starters. So, there could be, some growing pains and some learning on the job. But I think that type of thing, especially as junior or sophomores, that can be a good thing, learn on the job and hopefully the goal is to get better as this season goes, right? You don't want to let a whole season pass you by, but get better as the season goes, see where you end up at the end of the year.
Well, it certainly doesn't mean either that we think that they're going to have a bad year by any means. These underclassmen could come in and really shine. So it's just a challenge. I think that's the point we're trying to make. Anytime that you can start that many underclassmen on both sides of the ball, as Coach Vallis has said, certainly a challenge. But again, we'll see what these young guns can do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Farmington is one of those programs that's kind of proven over the years that they will be competitive. That I'm not really worried about where they end up, because I just feel like they're always in the mix. I mean, Coach Vallis has been around for, I think, almost 10 years. Maybe this is his 10th year, going soon to be. So he's been around a while. He's coached a lot of football there and had a lot of success there. Several one-loss seasons, where they were making some playoff runs. So yeah, I think that, Coach Vallis will have this team coached up, ready to go. And yeah, like we said, there may be some growing pains, but I think that they'll get there. Yep, absolutely. Mm-hmm. All right, Mitch, let's move down the list to West Hancock, the Titans. They were 1-8 a year ago. First-year head coach Coy Dorothy steps in. He tells us in his response that they will not look anything like they did last year. They've completely flipped schemes, both offensively and defensively. That's, really interesting. And for a 1-8 team, I think that's good, right? I think if players are buying in, I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, it's great to mix it up. I'm not sure when Coach Dorothy came in, but how much time has he had, right? That'll be the key. It seems like the kids have picked up on those schemes relatively quickly.
Yep.
But how long have they been working at it? And certainly if it's been a little bit too close to the season, that might take that much longer to get used to that. But if they've been working on it all summer, if they're working on it even prior to that, or at least learning it prior to that, they can step in right away and really make a difference. So we've heard our friends Chris Dewar and Matt Shuckman talk about how the culture has changed at West Hancock. So all good things going into Coach Dorothy's first season. So they open up at Hayworth. And yeah, looking forward to seeing, again, a completely different Titan team on the field.
Yeah. Mitch, did you see the Shuck on a Truck segment with Chris Dewar and Matt Shuckman?
Yeah, the renowned segment of Chug on a Drug.
And how cool is that? I just as soon as I start watching it, I just get a smile on my face. Those two guys are just so cool, and they're just talking about high school football and how much they love it and how much they love covering it. And it's just they're hanging out in the back of the truck bed. It's man, I want to be as cool as those guys when I grow up.
Look, I don't know what we'd call it, but maybe one day we'll do something on a pontoon boat just floating down the Mississippi, and we'll figure it out.
All right, I love it. All right, something brainstorming ideas. Big picture here. Yeah.
Now we're on a boat.
Quickly, let's talk through who West Hancock has here. Some of their personnel on the offensive side of the ball. Gavin Grothus at quarterback, Nolan Gooding at a wide receiver, Bryce Varner at a wide receiver, Tucker Kolzenberg, wide receiver, Evan Carroll as just an athlete. Could be interesting to see how they utilize him in a new offensive scheme. Gage Scott as well. On the defensive side of the ball, Carroll will also be a linebacker and a defensive back. Carter Barnes will be a defensive back. Charles Dadent will be a linebacker. So, these are kids that obviously under a first-year head coach, they're hungry, right? After one win a year ago, it's interesting to see what, how much buy-in you can get from that first-year head coach and what you can do. They have a tough schedule. I mean, we're talking through the teams they're going to have to go through, but it's exciting to see that kind of, renewed energy or that culture change that has been talked about.
It's a fresh start, right? Brand new head coach, brand new scheme. So looking forward to seeing, again, I mentioned earlier, looking forward to seeing what the West Hancock Titans look like in 2023. I think it'll be a different team than we absolutely have seen the past couple of years.
Yep. All right. Well, from West Hancock, who we, are learning about this year kind of for the first time, How about Knoxville Blue Bullets, a team we're very familiar with over the last few years? 9-3 a year ago, the 2A quarterfinals. Ryan Hebard, he was our LTC Coach of the Year, I believe, right?
I believe that's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Ryan Hebard is back. He in the form he sent back to us talked about being focused on maturing new varsity players. They're coming up through the system, but they're going to have to rely on some veterans. They return 5 starters on offense, 6 starters on defense. Overall, he likes their depth. This is a program that, I think that they kind of reload, year in and year out. We've kind of seen this Knoxville program reload. So I think it is a big part of those experienced veteran players to really take lead and show the new inexperienced varsity athletes kind of how it's done. I trust every year that this Knoxville program will do that.
Yeah, they never seem to disappoint, right? Since we've been covering them. Always a fan of what Knoxville does on the field. So looking forward to seeing what this team looks like. Like you said, got to replace about half of the offense, half of the defense. But that means, like you said, half of the starters are coming back. So it'll be a nice mix. Certainly, we've talked about Nolan McClay before. He'll be one of the running backs of this team. So Will Shreves comes in at quarterback. Bo Laws, who we've talked about in the past, at running back as well. And other guys that are going to anchor the effort here: Jacob Morris, Dalton Hutchinson, Joe Wall, Trenton Kurgan. So again, talking about guys who are going to be able to make an impact right away for this Blue Bullet team.
Yeah, I mean, some names that we're familiar with. We've heard those names sparing occasionally last year. So, yep, I think names that we'll be hearing this year as well. Let's keep going down the list here. Mitch, we didn't get much information from Lewiston. They were 0-9 last year. They jump into this Prairie Land big side of things. Like we said, with a challenge, to try to turn around an 0-9 season with a conference that I feel like is pretty talented. So see what they can do. Not really familiar with the program in general. I do believe I've been there once, and their basketball court is amazing. I think their basketball court looks incredible. If I remember correctly, I believe so. I think they have a really cool gym. So it doesn't do much for this podcast, but I felt like it was worth noting.
Yeah. So, if anyone in Lewiston is listening, please reach out to us. Let us know. We want to know more about the Indians. Like you said, tough year last year at 0-9, and it doesn't get a lot easier opening up this season with Macomb. So, but again, Lewiston, if you're listening, please let us know. Get a hold of us. Let us know who the follows are. We'd love to be able to keep in touch with you this year and certainly promote what you're doing. But as we talk about that, they play Macomb. Let's jump right into Macomb.
I was going to say the Macomb Bombers, 10-1 a year ago, undefeated regular season. They beat Quincy Notre Dame in the first round of the playoffs. They lost in the second round to Murfreesboro, way down in Southern Illinois. Head coach Tanner Horrell told us they are really trying to build off last year's success. I was at the game when they played at Rova Williams Field, and they looked really good. They were on their way to a 9-0 season, so clearly they were playing really good football. He did mention they were hit hard with graduation, so there's guys who have to step in new roles. They'll have to be ready to perform. But I think, Mitch, as we've seen enough teams around our area that if you have new kids or new players with inexperience, if they're trying to build off something from a year ago that really, brought that excitement, brought that energy to the program, that's an easier starting block than as opposed to anything else.
Yeah, it's a good starting block, but it's also a hard act to follow, right? So you want to be able to match as much success as you possibly can. So it'll be a challenge, I think. But Coach Horrell said what we just talked about with a few other teams. They think that if they can win those offensive and defensive line battles, that'll set the tone. So if that happens, they'll have yet another successful season. So some questions certainly heading into the season, but Coach Horrell likes the pieces that he has. The new quarterback this year, Braden Holthouse, played receiver. So we've seen that with other teams that we've covered. Princeton is a good example of converting receivers and skill position players to quarterbacks. It's really worked out well for them. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can bring. Again, he's a junior. One of his targets is going to be a sophomore, Drew Watson. Played last year. He had 4 catches in the playoffs when one of their top guys went down. So that's certainly a stepping stone there. You come in right away. I guess he would have been a freshman, and they come in to have 4 catches in the playoffs. That's
Wow.
that's really good. So, Holdhouse, Watson, Ian Case as the senior tight end, played a lot of defense, but coming over on the offense, a big size, 6'7", 225, Greg, there from Ian Case. So that's a pretty tall target for Holdhouse, I'd say.
Yeah, that's one of those guys that, you get down in the red zone, and normally most high school teams are thinking, find a way to pound it in, run it in. Man, if they can go up top to him, that's great. That would look really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if they're gonna do it, and I'm at the game, make sure they fade to the corner of the end zone that I'm standing in, because that always helps. I like that.
Yeah, you'll be able to cover it.
Yeah.
Case is big on defense too. He's one of the leading tacklers that comes back. Connor Bishop, a linebacker, who also will play on the offensive side, running the ball, and Holdhouse, the quarterback. Big year defensively last year too. 15 tackles, 8 solo, 4 interceptions. So I like the athleticism of this team. So even though, again, we're talking about certainly not a rebuild, not that at all, but a young team coming off of a 10-1 season. I'm excited about this Macomb team to see what they can do here in their second year effort.
Yeah. We also, when we're talking about Macomb, we got to give a shout out to the voice who's going to be calling their games, the Bomber Sports Network sports director, Justice Keene. He's been a follower of ours on Twitter for quite a while. So, oh no, actually, I just noticed he doesn't follow us, but I think he follows me, my personal account, but he should follow us now.
Yeah, we got to change that.
As I call it out, I realize he doesn't follow our View from the West account, but I think he follows my Greg Armstrong house. So anyway, yeah. He's a good kid. I've followed him for several years, and he does great coverage down there in Macomb. So anyway, Mitch, if you can believe it, that actually brings us to the end of the large school side. We've talked through everybody here.
Yeah.
So a lot of good football. We've talked about a lot of teams that have a lot of talent, but I don't think there's no clear-cut favorite. I don't think. Is there?
A lot of the teams that we talked about are going through maybe some growing. I don't want to say growing pains, just new starters, new faces, and new places, sort of thing. If I had to look at this list, and if you're asking me to predict who I think will win,
I am doing that.
I'm gonna say, as it has come down to in previous seasons,
yes,
it's going to come down to Mercer County and Knoxville. And I think with Colby Cox coming back, I think this Mercer County team takes the conference title this year.
Yeah, Mitch, you kind of stole my thunder. I was thinking that we were going to be different, and as people have probably realized over the years, we do not rehearse that. We don't even really think about it till we just get in the moment and decide. I also, as we read through everything, there's a lot of teams that have question marks or inexperience, but Colby Cox is the experience, in this conference, especially at the quarterback position.
And with a new coach who was a quarterback, certainly what dynamic do they have? What kind of wrinkles can they, draw up? So again, I think Knoxville is going to be right there. I really like Knoxville every single season. I think they do have some key pieces coming back, but I think with Colby Cox leading the way, I think Mercer County will get it done.
All right. Well, there it is. We agree on Mercer County. That is your look at the Lincoln Trail. The Lincoln Trail. Okay, Mitch, we should talk about this now. The Lincoln Trail Prairie Land, according to the IHSA website, it says Lincoln Trail / Prairie Land Large is the conference, but we know better. We'll call it the Lincolnland.
Right. And not to be confused, because I think there's a Prairie Trail Conference, I think.
Well, there's something called the Lincoln Prairie Conference. That's what I was thinking of. So there's Lincoln Prairie, there's Lincoln Trail Prairie Land, and there's Lincoln Land. So it's very, very confusing. So it's a lot of Lincoln in Illinois. We know this. So, yeah, right. and true to its word. And there's a lot of prairie in Illinois, I guess.
Right.
So all right. Well, Mitch, before we jump into the Lincoln Trail Prairie Land Small Division,
Sure.
Let's take a minute to thank a few of our sponsors. Mitch, if you're looking for that perfect gift for the high school football player, you got to check out Mathewson's Mini Helmets. They offer totally custom mini helmets or decals for your school. Find them on Facebook or on Twitter. Mitch, did you ever have a Morrison Mustang mini helmet?
I've never had a mini helmet. I've got full size. I do not have a mini helmet.
Okay, yeah.
It would look great. It would look great.
Well, that helmet always looks great. Absolutely.
Right.
So, Mitch, we are obviously thrilled to introduce this season the Mathewson's Mini Helmets Player of the Week Award. The best performance in our area will receive a custom View from the West mini helmet customized to include the player's name, their school, and the View from the West logo. Mitch, I'm itching to see this photo. I can't wait to see what it looks like. I can't wait to start sending this out. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. So can't wait to see what these look like. I haven't seen them yet, so no clue what to expect. But I have very, very high hopes from Mathewson's Mini Helmets, and looking forward to this partnership this year. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, I talked to it's Cody. I talked to him about getting this all set up before the season started. I never really told him that I had kind of a growing mini helmet collection over the past few years, which my wife hates, by the way. So I should talk quieter as I discuss all this. But I haven't really asked Cody about like maybe expanding my collection and maybe buying some more mini helmets. And I would need to buy more shelves in my house, but
Yeah, you'd have to buy more shelves. You also have to get a P.O. box at your post office so that those deliveries can go straight to the post office and not to your house.
Well, because my wife works from home and I work, in the office. So she'd be seeing all the packages before I do. So I would not be able to hide it very well. But anyway, if you want to check out Mathewson's Mini Helmets, we encourage you to do that. Check them out, search them out on Facebook and on Twitter. We thank them so much for supporting View from the West. We're excited for the award this season. Another sponsor we got to get in here, Brink Sportswear, offers totally custom, made-to-order football uniforms that allow coaches and athletic directors to take control of their brands. The uniforms are available in sublimated and tackle twill. They offer free digital mock-ups, free shipping on team orders, and free physical samples before you buy, so the team knows exactly what you're getting before you spend any of your program's money. Uniform sets start at $99 for sublimated, $120 for tackle twill. Mitch, I've seen some of the tweets they've been putting out about the uniforms they've been giving out. They look good. They would be Mitch Stormer approved. We'll have to get you on it. We'll have to have you look at them. They would be Mitch Stormer approved. Very clean, striping matches, all the things that Mitch Stormer needs. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, we like that. We appreciate that type of craftsmanship and attention to detail that Brink Sportswear puts together. So anything that I've seen from them looks real good.
Absolutely. All right, well, find them on Twitter, or you can go to brinksportswear.com. All right, Mitch, we're jumping into the Lincolnland small school side of things. We'll start at the top of the alphabet. We'll start with A-Town, the A-Town Tornadoes. Head coach Rick Quinn, been around, I think, since this co-op started. I think he's been their head coach since this co-op as A-Town was born. They struggled last year. They were only 1-8, but the year before that, very exciting football team, a playoff football team. They do return a lot of players from last year, so they have a lot of varsity minutes. They have some players that returned from that team I just referenced that went to the quarterfinals. So they have that experience they can rely upon. Some names that we, might recognize a little bit, but they got to bounce back. It was a long year for A-Town last year.
Yeah, well, I think they probably went through what we just talked about in the big school section, where you have a successful season and then you lose some of those starters. Maybe you have a down year, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that isn't a good foundation for the future. So A-Town, certainly that team a couple years ago, were they undefeated until they lost in the quarterfinals?
No, I think they had gotten beat near the end of the year.
Did they lose United? Is that what that was?
Yeah, it was late in the year.
Either way, they were the one seed.
They were a very good. Yes, they were the one seed. They were a great
one seed in the 1A North, which of course is just one of the hardest brackets in the state. So having a season like that and then coming last year again 1-8, playing some new guys, but again having that experience. Getting those kids minutes, getting them plays, I think that's going to turn this team around a little bit this season. You know, I can't predict what their season is going to look like, but I don't think it's going to be 1-8. I think guys like Kellen Hook, Drew Sheckler, who I know we've talked about in the 4, Carter Redfern, who is familiar, Aiden Boone and Jay Simmer on the line. So I think again, like Coach Quinn, and he's been through this before, right? And
Yep.
as many years that you've talked about that he's been there. Maybe a bit of a rebuild last year, but now we're working on experience, and I think they're going to turn it around a little bit this year.
Yeah, I always think back. I think I met Coach Quinn for the first time in like the first week of practices when they formed the A-Town co-op. When it was Avon, it was I don't know if they had been with another co-op, and then Abingdon when they consolidated, and it was their first year. And I always remember going out there and seeing the new logo for the first time. And it's a pretty aggressive look. I mean, it looks way different than what you'd seen before. So it was cool. I always look back on that and remember that. And they had some good teams early on in that co-op. So So all right. Well, yes, let's keep moving down the list here. Couple new teams we'll get into here on this side of the division in the Lincolnland Conference. South Fulton Rebels, they were 3-6 a year ago. But Mitch, what I kind of look at with a team like South Fulton and with several teams in this new small division is, do they fare better when they don't have to go up against Macomb, when they don't have to go up against the Farmington, Elmwood, Brimfield, when they're coming down to teams that are at their level? I think we'll talk about a few more teams that are in that similar situation in this division, but that's a team I look at that, maybe they fare a little different, moving forward.
Right. And that's sort of the dynamic now with these teams or these conferences kind of coming together. So you might see certainly some old rivalries in certain games that we see year in and year out, but we're also going to see some new games. So like you said, I think with South Fulton, maybe getting a couple new teams on the schedule that they don't normally play could fare well for them. So look to see if the Rebels can bounce back from 3-6.
Yep. Let's jump into another team, another new team kind of on our radar this season, the Havana Ducks. One of my favorite mascots. I just always love Havana Ducks. That's a fun one.
Have we seen the helmet? Because I have not.
I don't know. I don't believe I have. So anyone listening, if you know what Havana's helmet looks like, I would love to know.
I'm looking it up right now.
Okay.
So go through your preview, and I'm gonna look up the helmets.
All right, that sounds good. So Mitch, we heard from head coach Colton Hammond. They were 4-5 a year ago, but he likes the team speed they have coming back with several guys who he thinks will be dynamic ball carriers. He thinks they also have one of the best linemen in the conference, and he'll be the leader of a bigger group of linemen than maybe this Havana team has seen in a few years. So right there, you have a combination of dynamic ball carriers plus a big line. I mean, I like that combination to start. Offensive line play, they'll have to return a few key members, but I think he likes what he sees there. He likes the way this group finished the year last year. They were very physical, and so he's hoping they can continue that into this year. A few players we'll look at. Braden Barner, versatile quarterback. He'll be in his second year as the starting QB. 700 yards of total offense, 11 touchdowns. Also had 70 tackles on defense. So this guy's doing it on both sides of the ball, being very effective. Hunter Nichols, one of those running backs we just referenced. He'll also, he had 500 total yards and 4 touchdowns in kind of a secondary role a year ago. He'll be the lead back this year. So it's his turn this year. Jaron Boggs, wide receiver and a running back. He'll step into a larger role as well. Had 5 total touchdowns last year, primarily out of the slot. So I'm guessing he's going to jump into a bigger role. And Mitch, a 2-year all-conference player who coach said maybe one of the best linemen in the conference. He may be one of my favorite names that we've seen yet this year. Yeah. McGuire Martindale.
Yeah.
Had 60 tackles.
Looks like a guy who's going to tackle.
Had 60 tackles from the defensive end spot. They're expecting great things from him once again. He'll be the anchor on the line that coach was referencing. So McGuire Martindale, that's a name. I love that name.
Yeah. All right. Let me tell you this here, Greg.
All right, let's go.
One, it's probably my favorite logo that we cover, and I think you tweeted it out because it's the duck.
Yeah.
And it's like the old school duck.
Yeah. I'm familiar. Yep.
So looking at their uniforms, And this is from last year, so I assume that they're still correct. Which, side note, I think this game is against
I can look that up.
Illini West. So going back to Illini West, they have a great uniform. They have like a Charger. They're certainly the nickname's the Chargers.
Yep.
They have the same helmet, but their color scheme is blue and orange. So that's
Absolutely.
a great look. But Havana appears to have the Oregon helmet. It's a white helmet with maroon wings.
Oh, cool.
And the picture that I'm looking at, their away set is a white uniform and maroon pants. So it's a very, very clean look. So this conference has some strong helmet contenders.
Oh man, we are already applauding Coach Hammond and the Havana Ducks. That sounds awesome. I love it.
I got to deep dive the new teams and their helmets because I just saw 2 new teams. I like them both. So now going back to everything that you said that I, truth be told, wasn't really listening to because I was wearing the helmet. But I think that this, certainly when you have a quarterback returning for a second year in Braden Barner, right, and had 700 yards of total offense, and certainly quite dynamic on defense too, and all the names that you mentioned who are coming back, and with a lineman like McGuire Martindale, going to say his name as often as I can, I think that, even though they're replacing a couple of key pieces on the offensive line, they're bringing back a good group of skill position, good speed. So I think this team will turn around and get into the playoffs this year. I don't think they'll be a 4-5 team. Just again with what they bring back and coaching up their newer kids, really like where Coach Hammond has the Ducks heading into 2023.
Yeah, good call. I would agree. I think there's a lot of pieces there, and I think they, there's potential there.
One of those pieces was McGuire Martindale, if we didn't mention that.
Got it. All right. Love it. Anawan Weathersfield, the Titans, 7-3.
Yeah, here's my favorite for the small school. Just already gonna put it out there.
Oh man, you don't even save the suspense till the end.
I started chuckling because I saw all the returning names coming back. It's like, oh, I cannot wait to see this team on the field.
Here we go. The Titans were 7-3 a year ago. First round loss, tough one to Rockford Lutheran, 35-19. I want to say they hung around that game for a little while.
Yeah.
And, we thought that was a tough matchup. We thought it was a tough draw when we saw it on paper. And, and even back then I thought it's a tough draw. I would have loved to see him win it, but they're a year away. That this is, now this is the year. So, Mitch, we've talked about it. Head coach Tony Grip basically has all his skill positions back, multiple all-conference players returning on offense and defense. The big thing for them will be getting that O-line established with the run game, help protections to be able to pass the ball. They really want to be a more diverse offense. That was something that Coach Grip really kind of referenced in his season preview to us. And that would come with, Dylan Orey at quarterback and establishing a relationship with some of those wide receivers, some of those connections to really make that, vertical passing game, more balanced out. What you talk about it, Mitch, you already called it out. What do you like here?
I like a lot. A lot.
Oh, yeah.
I was a big fan of Dylan Orey last year.
Yep.
1,400 yards of total offense, just about 20 touchdowns. Zeb coming back 1,300 yards. 1,500 yards of total offense. Colin Horvath, who is one of the top targets, and certainly with Landon Sauer. So, I really like what this team looks like on offense. Certainly with defense coming back, you've got all LTC guys coming back, like Ashton Potter, Drew Haberback, a lot of tackles from Cohen Newman. This is just a really, really good squad. And I know that I'm going to be in the doghouse with the Rovo Williamsfield fans again this year, as I seem to be every single year.
You already are.
But, and I'll get to them in a minute, because I think what you said will apply to Rova this year, where it's almost like they're a year away, whereas that was Anawan Weathersfield last year. Now this is their time, and certainly coming off of a 7-3 year, it's hard to think that they're not already there, so to speak. But I think this is a team that is going to look like that team that went to the semifinals a couple of years ago. And just with what they have coming back, I really think that they will be my favorite for this small school side of the conference.
Yeah, I can see it. I can't, I will argue with you, but it's tough. It's gonna be a very exciting race. We'll get to it. We'll get to another team that you may have already referenced there in a minute. Before we get to them, Mitch, we got to thank our newest sponsor to View from the West, the Cupcake Cartel. Gourmet cupcakes made to order, over 40 flavors. Mitch, go tell me these flavors. Give me the rundown here.
Listen,
these are just the popular flavors, of course.
Listen. We've all enjoyed Hy-Vee cupcakes over the years, right?
Sure.
But there's just nothing better than that homemade mom and pop cupcake here that Cupcake Cartel is known for. So we've got over 40 flavors we're talking about here. I'm talking wedding cake, lemon blueberry, strawberry milkshake, snickerdoodle, Oreo, just to name a few. So
absolutely
perfect for any occasion, Greg. Weddings, birthdays, fundraisers, a Thursday night podcast.
That's
it doesn't matter. There's no bad time for cupcakes.
Can you imagine this? Let's throw this out in the universe. Cupcake Cartel, gourmet cupcakes late on a Friday night while you're listening to the Instant Reacts podcast.
Say less. I mean, come on.
I think that sounds good. Well, we want to thank the Cupcake Cartel. You can find them on Facebook. Thank you so much for their support. Mitch, I didn't even ask you. I meant to ask what out of these popular flavors, obviously there's a bunch more flavors, but out of these popular flavors, where's your head go, as I would say on the podcast?
Okay, let me ask you this. Let me ask you a question that might define our friendship. How do you eat a cupcake?
Well, I think you got to start. You can't, if it's a gourmet cupcake where there's a lot of frosting on top.
Yeah.
I think you kind of got to start on the side, so you get some cake and some of the frosting.
Okay.
What do you? Yeah, that's the way to do it. What do you mean?
You peel the bottom off.
Well, yeah.
And you stick it on the top, and then you eat it like a cupcake sandwich.
Oh my gosh.
That's how you do it.
Oh,
then
wow. Okay.
You got cupcake on the top and the bottom of your mouth. You got frosting in the middle. Doesn't make a mess.
Wow. Have you taught your kids this? This seems like a breakthrough.
No, this is special to me and for my information only. Now, other than I just shared it, but not.
Well, yeah. We'll have to ask Dawn from the Cupcake Cartel if that is the secret way to eat a cupcake. If that's
and I don't want to, I'm not about destroying a cupcake, but I'm also not trying to make a mess. That's all.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, well, find the Cupcake Cartel on Facebook. Thank you so much for their support.
The Quad City's first and only fantasy football show, For Fantasy's Sake, has you all covered when it comes to all of your fantasy football needs. The guys come to you live every Sunday morning during the football season from 10 to 11:30. They've got the best analysis, rankings, DFS, and gambling advice between the Rock and Mississippi Rivers. So tune into For Fantasy's Sake every Sunday during the football season from 10 to 11:30 a.m. on Facebook and YouTube.
All right, here we go. Let's keep going down the list. United Red Storm, 2-7 a year ago. Head coach David Milroy had a great season 2 years ago. They were a playoff team. We really liked what they put on the field a couple years ago. They were a playoff team. I believe David Milroy was our LTC Coach of the Year a couple years ago when they made their playoff run. They do return some talented pieces from that team a year ago that struggled. And again, this is a team I kind of look at that if you have some pieces returning to a division in this conference that allows you to play teams that are your size, that, the balance, the playing field's a little more balanced maybe than the crossover games you saw in years past, I think there's potential there.
Yeah. And again, it's the same kind of sentiment we've talked about with a couple of these teams. They had great success, and certainly a United team that won a state championship their first year that they were a co-op. Or school, I should say, but they had that success 2 years ago, like you mentioned, a little bit of a down year last year, but those players come back and add to that experience for this season. So once again, I don't foresee a United team going 2-7 this year. Coach Milroy has been around the block, has certainly built teams from bad records and done much better in years or the year after. So I expect more of the same from United this year.
Yep. Well, Mitch, keep moving down the list here. The Rova Williams Field Cougars. Mitch, they were 6-5 a year ago. They beat Stark County in the first round of the playoffs, led by head coach Grant Goldstrand. They like me. They don't like you, but
nope. I would just say that I see Riley Danner's name on here, and how this started was we left him off of that mid-season, whatever we called it, mid-season watch or whatever it was. So that's where my downfall really started, and I just keep putting my foot in my mouth, and I feel terrible. So yeah, let's get into it.
All right. 7, I'll talk about them because they,
Yeah, please.
Yeah. 7 offensive starters return. Coach Grant Goldstrand says they return a lot at the running back and receiver position, and that's in addition to Riley Danner at quarterback, which you mentioned. Coach Goldstrand likes that he's a smart quarterback. He's able to orchestrate the offense that has a lot of moving pieces. I saw it last year firsthand, and now he's back with that much more experience. Defensively, they have 5 starters coming back. Depth at the linebacker position will be a strength. They need to play better team defense. He mentioned that in his preseason form. Just the little things, getting lined up correctly, doing your job at your position, getting to the ball, tackling in space, all the kind of fundamentals that come with defense. He really was going to stress that in the preseason for them. And they want to create explosive plays on offense. I think with Riley Danner, Jack Godsell, Brian Bertelshofer, Lewis Sams, Luke Nelson, those are the guys that can help create that explosive offense. Mitch, I know you like Annawan Wethersfield, and they got a lot back, but yeah. I'm looking at the Cougars.
I can't salvage it. Let me say it this way. I'm looking at Rova's schedule right now. Rova Williamsfield. Don't want to say just Rova because I got in trouble for that too. I'm looking at the Cougars schedule, and they don't play Knoxville. They don't play Farmington. I foresee this team being undefeated heading into week 8 against Annawan Wethersfield.
Yep.
The flip side of that is I also think Annawan Wethersfield could potentially be undefeated heading into that week 8 matchup. They got Farmington the week before.
Yep.
I do think that both of these teams will be 8-1, and that whoever wins that head-to-head matchup will be the small school champion. So as much as I do like about Annawan Wethersfield, I think that Rova will be right there. I think their schedule is incredibly favorable. And then we talked about Annawan Wethersfield last year, I think Rova is, because a lot of those guys you mentioned are juniors.
Yeah.
So I think it builds up to next year even more that they will be the team to beat. I just think that this year the Titans will still be in the way. So that matchup is week 8.
Yeah.
And that's already one to circle because I think, again, both teams have the potential to be undefeated heading into that.
Yep. Well, I'm gonna hit pause right now on everything. And Matt Randazzo, wherever you're listening, whatever you're doing right now, stop what you're doing. Make a note in your phone. Just make a mental note that when that matchup comes up in week 8, I will be at Rova covering that game. So yep. I'm just telling Matt Randazzo on publicly in the podcast to make that note in his notes at WQAD that I will be going to that game.
Is it his birthday today, or did I miss it?
It was yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday or 2 days ago, depending on when you hear this.
I keep getting in my own way, so I'll have to try and apologize for that. I was in Texas. Sorry.
I did text him a happy birthday message. So
okay,
there you go. So man, again, I'm just scoring points everywhere here. So
yeah, I gotta catch up.
All right, Mitch, let's keep going down the list. The Princeville Princes. We didn't get a response from them this year, unfortunately, Mitch. So they were 4-5 a year ago. They just missed out on the playoffs. I believe it came down to a week 9 matchup against Stark County, and the winner was in, and the loser unfortunately was out. And Princeville was on the short end of that. They were out. So John Carruthers' team fell a little bit short of the playoffs. You always kind of expect Princeville to be in the mix. Certainly 4-5 is, down from where they had been in years past. But I'm interested to see, depending on what the pieces they have back, where where they could potentially end up here.
Yeah, a team that they're always just they're hard to predict because sometimes they hang around real close, but then looking at last year their losses, there wasn't one loss that was closer than 2 scores. So I think for the past couple years they've been hanging around that 5-4, 4-5 that record. I think they were a good story that we had when we first started this podcast in the COVID year, where they were practicing out, by themselves. And so, yeah, the Princes and Coach Carruthers, just always a feisty team. But again, if anyone in Princeville is listening, please reach out to us. Let us know what we're missing. Looking forward to seeing this team on the field as we always are. But we want to cover you, and we just haven't been able to reach you.
Well, Mitch, another team that's kind of new to us, in our coverage, Rushville Industry, the Rockets. Hey, we talked about good helmets on this podcast. Yeah. Have you seen Rushville?
Yeah, big fan of what they got on the lids.
Rushville Industry looks really cool. Now, I do want to say I saw some pictures where they had like a gold face mask.
Yeah.
But then I saw the video. Big shout out to Chris Dewar for helping us. He sent us the link to the season preview that he ran, his barnstorming tour, which I love Chris Dewar's coverage this time of year. I love his coverage all the time, but this time of year he does a great job with high school football. His barnstorming tour, the helmets they were wearing in practice looked like they had a black face mask. Mm-hmm. I thought the gold popped a little more, I would say, but it's got I love the Rocket decals on the side and the center stripe that kind of fades as it goes back on a purple lid. That's a really slick look. Yeah,
I think so too. It'll pop on Friday night.
Yep, absolutely. Well, let's dive in and talk a little bit about the Rockets here. You know what? In Chris Dewar's story, which again, big shout out to him for helping us out. Head coach Brian Lafferty really likes the culture that they have. That this team is kind of that old school, gritty football mentality. So, that's kind of always fun. I think we both kind of appreciate that kind of roster. But the interesting, when you start looking at things, they have a lot of unknowns. This is a roster that's turned itself over, a lot of roster turnover from a playoff team a year ago that went 6-4. So it should be interesting to see how this team fares in this new look division.
Yeah, the playoff team the past couple of years, I think they were a 7-win team 2 years ago. So a lot of tradition there with the Rockets. So, but yeah, listening to their preview, looks like they're going to be having players in a couple different new positions. Maybe a brand new quarterback, but in the wing T offense, where we're plugging and placing different players, and they'll find out what works for them.
Yeah, well, I think you talked about that wing T offense. You have a cornerstone. They have a third-year starter at center, so that's a great building block when you're running kind of a wing T. If you got that experience snapping the ball for you. But Mitch, we have to talk about what Chris Dewar called the Travis Gray experience.
Yeah.
He's a lineman for him. He's rolling the mullet out of the back of the helmet. He's now turning into a fullback this year. He's straight out of like the, late 80s, early 90s type of football mold, right?
Yeah, exactly. It looks just like that. So he's definitely got the best, to use a hockey term, the best lettuce.
I like it.
In terms of his hair. So yeah, you don't see that look too often anymore, but when you see it, you know that he's a pretty darn good football player. So now that he's going to be running the ball, you know that he's going to be aggressive. And as he put in his own words, run some folks over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they graduated 76% of their rushing attack from last year. That was in the, according to Chris in his story. So that's a lot to replace, but you got to love kind of Travis Gray's mentality. He'll be joined by Jordan McGinnis, and actually his brother will be in the backfield a little bit as well, Tanner Gray. So this Rushville Industry team has some pieces, but clearly they'll be a different looking team than they were a year ago.
Yeah, I think so too. So they open up away in week 1 at Stark County. So a good matchup there to kick off their 2023 campaign.
Yeah, we'll talk about Stark County next. They're the last team on our list here, and I think that week 1 matchup, I put it in our matchups to watch, in the tweet that we sent out covering this conference, because I really feel like that's kind of one of those X factor games that that game could go. I know it's crazy because it's week 1. That game could go a long way in determining which team is going to get to that 5-6 win mark and be playoff, be playoff bound.
Yeah, and I think Rushville had kind of went through that last year. I believe they lost their first 2 games, and then in a little bit of an 0-2 hole, came all the way back to get into the playoffs. So
okay,
don't want to be in that situation certainly, but a Rushville team that's certainly used to that type of adversity.
Yep. Well, let's jump in last, but definitely never least.
No,
Stark County, the Rebels. My good friend, my buddy Jade, head coach Jade Nord. Mitch, we sent out all these season previews, and all the coaches had great responses. Coach Nord had great responses, but we wanted, to get a little flavor of the team personality, and we were hoping to get a little, just a little extra, something different than the X's and O's and the impact players. And I think all he had to say when we were looking for that little bit extra was, "I'm terrible at answering these questions." So
yeah. The type of insight we're looking for. Yeah.
Yep. So we won't push him on that one. We'll let it go. We're good. But no, in all seriousness, Coach Nord had a great form that he returned to us. He says they returned several skill position players that saw a lot of time last year, names that we recognize that we'll get into, and he feels like they have some depth in those areas. What they're really looking for this year is that consistency. They ran for 394 yards against Elmwood Brimfield. They averaged 9.5 yards per carry in that game. But then you move on later in the season, several times they were held under 100 yards. So, that's a little bit of, can you find something that works and can the players execute game in and game out? That would go a long way to this Stark County team being where they were last year, or, what they're hoping for, improving on last year.
Yeah, and certainly last year, losses to Knoxville, to Rova, to Weathersfield, to Mercer County, and then to Rova again in the playoffs. So, they lost to the good teams. That's all you can say, and that was certainly coming off of a 1-8 season. So they saw that that jump last year. Good experience getting into the playoffs, at least 5 wins, and so now you've got a team coming back, like you mentioned, several skill positions, certainly led by Luke Rewerts, who we really, really like as a quarterback for the Rebels, and some other names that we'll get into. So I expect, we talked a lot about Ann Arbor Weathersfield and Rovo Williamsfield, which I still think that game might determine who wins the conference. But Stark County is going to be right there with who they have coming back.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Rewerts, a name we called last year. Nolan Orwig, a junior running back. He had 5 touchdowns a year ago. Chris Barnwell will step in as a junior at running back. He'll get some more carries. Matthew Bowser, a senior wide receiver. He had 104 yards rushing. He also caught some passes. He also threw some passes. So he was doing a little bit of everything for him. Connor Wagenbach, a senior wide receiver. You go through the list. Tanner Price was a 3rd-year starter on the offense. He'll be a 3rd-year starter on the offensive line. So, there's pieces here. Matthew Bowser, again, a name we talked about as a wide receiver. He's a 3rd-year starter as a defensive back as well. So, this is a Stark County Rebels team that I think, like Coach said, if they can establish that consistency defensively, being able to stop those run-heavy teams, those little things, they can shore some of that up. I think this team is looking to improve, once again. And again, it comes down to, I do like Stark County being in a division where the playing field's a little more leveled. They're facing enrollments that are closer to their size. They're avoiding the big crossovers with the Prairie Land. Yeah,
they're certainly got two pretty crucial games to start off the year against teams that are coming back off of playoff appearances. They open up at home against Rushville Industry, and then they go to Kewanee Weathersfield. So they really get into the thick of things right away. So, but again, with what they have coming back, could the Rebels be a disruptor in the fold here? And again, maybe try and get their footing up right there with the Titans and with the Cougars to try and get a share or a claim to this title. I think that they can. So again, the Rebels with what they have coming back, Luke Rewards, I'm looking forward to what they can do, and I expect them to get back into the playoffs this year.
There you go. I like it. I like the prediction there. Well, Mitch, we kind of like spoiled the big surprise at the end that, we both kind of called out who we think is going to win this small school side of things. You're going with Anawan Weathersfield. I'm going with Rova Williamsfield. So I like it. I feel like it's going to be a great season. And I hope you're right. I hope it comes to that week 8 matchup because Matt Randazzo, that's where I'm going. I'm going to be there.
Right.
So.
Exactly.
All right, Mitch, can you believe it? We just rolled through. There's the first ever, the inaugural Lincolnland Conference preview.
That's right.
Does it feel historic? Do you feel like you just made history?
Well, I expected that it would rival the track for longest preview, but with a couple teams that we didn't get a whole lot of info from, I think we sidestepped that a little bit. So with the track being the next one that we record, I believe. We're getting down to it, right? We got the track to cover. You got the big show for Western Big Six, and then by then it'll be week 1. Yeah,
well, if you're already mentioning track, and I got my buddy Chase sending me messages. He can't wait to listen to the track preview. He was texting me after we recorded the NUIC one saying, "Man, I can't wait a week to get to the track." Like what? So he's chomping at the bit to get to it. That's right. We'll be getting to the Three Rivers Athletic Conference season preview will be coming next week. Also next week, we'll get to the Western Big Six. That'll be the big blowout show that Mitch, you're bowing out of that one. You want nothing to do with this. It's going to be Matt Randazzo.
I'm certainly going to stay out of it. I would love to be a part of that conversation because I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
You can jump on. The more the merrier. It's going to be a lot of voices.
Yeah, I got to save it for the track preview because that's going to take forever.
Well, that's true. You don't want to lose your voice, but yeah.
I'll give you my Western Big Six prediction closer to that. So
that's fair.
I'll make sure that I at least give my prediction.
We could do at the end of the Three Rivers one. Maybe we'll talk a little Big Six with you to give to get your thoughts and your takes on everything. So, all right, that sounds great. So here we go. 2 previews left, and then it's the real deal.
Yep,
I love it.
Do you know where you're going week 1 yet?
No. Okay. Honestly, I haven't looked into that yet. And maybe I'll start pulling an Edgy Tim and just looking week by week. Don't even look ahead.
Just start driving and look to the lights. And just pull in. It doesn't matter.
Oh, Mitch, you're already getting me all nostalgic about the fall. I can't wait. No, but that does bring me to an important point. Mitch, one of us needs to sit down and do the week by week, spreadsheet that we normally do. We haven't done that yet either. So we got homework to do.
Yeah, that's going to be probably a Thursday night thing. What games are going on this week?
Sounds good. Well, thank you to everyone who listens. I want to thank our sponsor, Breedlove Sporting Goods, Western Illinois' premier sporting goods store for uniforms, apparel, equipment, awards, online team stores. Their primary focus is right here on the western side of the state of Illinois. So Breedlove Sporting Goods is your fastest way to outfit your team. Of course, check them out on Facebook or head to breedlovesports.com. Or Cal Breedlove, contact him directly. Email calbreedlove@gmail.com. So that will do it for the Lincolnland Conference. We'll talk to you next week when we're talking track. We're talking Western Big Six. Mitch, it's getting down to the real deal here. We're getting close.
Yeah, 2 weeks. Can't wait.
That'll do it for this week's episode of View from the West. Thank you so much for listening. I encourage you to go out to Apple Podcasts or Podbean and subscribe so you can follow along, and downloads will come automatically every week. You can follow along on Twitter at ViewFromWestPod. You can also email me if you're interested in being a sponsor, viewfromwestpod@gmail.com. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.